On my first payday, I had a blind date with Mom or Grandma Mary Ply, and we went to Chicago with a couple of our good friends. The draft came out as war was declared, and I was drafted in 1942. Mom and I got engaged on Christmas Eve in 1942, and I entered the service on February 2nd, 1943. I was stationed in Gadsden, Alabama, a brand new camp, mud hole. I became a corporal right away as my ROTC helped.
So what was such a mud hole about Alabama?
Well, they told me it was such a beautiful place, and when we stepped off the train, we was ankle deep in mud. And it was a brand new camp.
Yeah.
And the barracks were just built, and we had to, even to get to the doorways, we had to cut down tree branches and whatnot. And
so you started training what you call hillbillies. Why were they hillbillies?
Well,
Because they were Southerners?
yes, we had, there was I'll put, say the smart guys was from Indiana, northern Indiana and Ohio. And then they brought in a lot of guys that lived out in the country, didn't know their left foot from their right foot.
Yeah.
Which was all right. But I don't know why they did that. But after a while, after we got them whipped into shape, they turned out to be good troopers.
Now you mentioned you had a race ride in the camp.
Yeah, and we know.
Stand on that at all?
Yes, I could say one thing, that the camp at this time, the blacks had one area camp that they were allowed in, and they wasn't allowed in the white area. And going into town, they start causing trouble in town.
In town, so it wasn't actually on the base.
Yeah. And what really started it somewhat, they had a PX, a post exchange, in the black section that was run by a white fella. And the white fella had a date with one of the black gals from the guys, the soldiers. So that's probably set it off. But they squashed it real quick. They rounded up all the blacks, and they had them march down a certain road, and they wasn't allowed to look or say anything, and back into their own area.
Yeah.
And
so
then
get back straightened out then.
Then our general called their officers, and because they threatened they're going to hang our general.
Really?
And so, and as you know, I don't know if I was sergeant of the guard, and I had to post a guard around the black camp. And but our officers, they went in. He went carrying a rope and told the black leaders, "Go ahead and hang me."
No kidding.
And they never moved. Well, they knew better.
Yeah.
And it was straightened out. And but they were restricted. After that, they couldn't go into town for a while. So But we still didn't mingle. The blacks they had their own, and they had their own area, which was fine, and we had our own. You got to remember now that this is after the war was over, you know, we were mixed.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause just for 1 second. Okay, we're back. Talking with Ted Laseco, my grandfather. Now, you started to, you got assigned a special assignment and, or a special school to work with the toxic gas. And tell me a little bit about that. You mentioned you were gassed twice by the chlorine gas.
Yes, this was in Huntsville, Alabama, and we were teaching the civilians how to handle this stuff. And we had certain things that had to be done because these ton containers, what we called them, were large cylinders, and the valves would get through the chlorine gas would deteriorate, and they had to be changed and new valves put in. We had special equipment and that we used, and we were breaking in the civilians how to do this. Well, as soon as they unscrewed the valve and trying to get the new one in, and if they kept their heads, they would have been all right, because everything was built in to work to screw in a new valve. Well, they could get excited and take off running, and of course the gas alarms went off, and then we had to get in and by yourself, and which was pretty tough at that time, and get the valve in. And of course we got most of the things we did, but by the chlorine gas, when I say we got gassed, we lost some of our hair.
Yeah.
And it kind of irritated our skin, even though we had protective clothing on. So
You were okay?
I was okay. We had to spend a little time in the hospital.
That's not how long. Is that how you lost most of the hair on top of your head?
That's what I claim. It's not true. I did lose hair, but I was losing it anyway.
Now, you have a short story in here about when you quote unquote bopped your company commander, Lieutenant Smith.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I don't care to discuss it really.
Okay.
But I had just got out of the hospital, and it was his fault.
And he wouldn't let you.
I went through a hearing, it wasn't actually a court-martial hearing, but I had to go through a hearing of 8 officers. And I had a commanding officer being my lawyer, and Lieutenant Smith was, he was a first lieutenant acting as our company commander, and he was demoted to second lieutenant. But he got his rating back as time went on overseas. But we never had good feelings with one another.
Yeah. Well, we can move on if you'd rather do that. I know you went from Alabama to New York and banged up your knee a little bit, but then eventually you made your way over to England because I guess the United States was getting ready for the invasion.
Yes.
With the war going on in Europe. So what was the ride on the Queen Mary like overseas?
Quite interesting. And we were by ourselves, but we stayed much as we could close to land when we were sailing. And then when they really got out in the open seas, we zigzagged all the way across. And and we had air cover in case there was any submarines that we would pick up from our sounding.
Is that what the zigzag was for?
Yeah,
Throw off the subs?
yeah. So it was quite an experience, and the Queen Mary was loaded with troops. We had a shift where you slept. One night you slept in a bunk, and the other night you slept on the deck in a bedroll. I was going to say something else, but I can't.
Why not?
No.
You can say whatever you want to say.
You know, we call them the fart sack.
Oh, yeah? When you had to sleep on the deck?
Well, whenever you were, because you had a bedroll,
Like a sleeping bag.
like a sleeping bag. Yeah.
So now when you got to England, what was your primary job? You were with the 65th Chemical War Depot, and it was a detached unit, correct?
Right. Our primary job when we got there was to set up a depot to handle toxic gas, and which we were in at that time at the Forest of Dean. We was up near the coast of Wales.
Okay.
And we lived in Quonset huts, which wasn't bad, but they were cold. And so one of the jobs that I had was to go down to the port of Exeter and supervising the unloading of ships that had toxic gas, carrying our gas, and putting them on trains.
What kind of gases
Uh,
did you have?
Mustard gas, Lewisite gas, chlorpicrin. And these were all in containers, and some of them could have leakage,
Sure.
and we had to decontaminate them. And so we guarded this stuff on a way to our storage place with the train. And no need to say we were scarfed by the Germans because they were flying over England at that time.
When you say scarf, what do you mean by that?
Strafing, I should say, not scarfing, strafing.
Okay.
And they were strafing the train. So then after,
Trying to bomb it?
yeah, trying to blow it up. But we got into a tunnel, and then we had to check everything and make sure that everything was okay, and if we had a leak or we just decontaminated, we had equipment.
Yeah. So now, D-Day was coming up. You guys are in England, and there was another outfit similar to yours, the 61st. You were in the 65th.
Yeah.
So you were responsible for decontamination if the Germans were to use gas, but also packing bombs and things like that for the Air Force.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, what was it like knowing that D-Day was coming up and all the troops over there in England were getting ready to go? What was the mood or the feeling like in the area?
Well, there was so much activity at that time that was going on with the Air Force, our Air Force, and, well, the British Air Force. But we had so many of our own planes there at that time. And, you know, they were going over and bombing at that time certain areas, preparing for the invasion. And so it was quite exciting.
Yeah.
And well, they moved us closer to where we were going to embark to go get on the ship, and we had everything all ready in case they did use gas. And the Air Force, we had their 100-pound bombs of mustard gas ready. They can be loaded, which they never was. There was no gas on the continent of England, on the continent of Europe. It was all stored in England.
Okay. So then D-Day came around, and you wrote that it was D-Day +3 when you went across the English Channel.
Yes, it's a question mark. Things happen so quick and so exciting, and so many things were taking place at that time. And they were getting all these ships. It was a huge, huge convoy. Now, we wasn't in the first convoy that went over. And we were on the main command ship, the Prince Henry. That was the English ship. And we were just jam-packed on there. And
how many men do you think are in your 65th?
250. We had 250 men. We were a motorized outfit.
Okay.
And but none of our all of our equipment was on barges.
Did everybody in the company have a sidearm or some sort of weapon?
We all had a carbine.
Okay.
And of course, you had to have your gun unloaded with so many men. Because maybe accidentally something would go off and
Right.
you'd shoot one of your own people. So until you got where you were going,
They made you have it empty, huh?
yeah,
So you landed over at Omaha Beach.
yeah.
And how since it was D-Day +3, I guess the Allied forces had pushed the Germans back a
They
little bit.
pushed them back. Yeah, they were telling us that they had them back at least 5 miles, so we were fairly safe. They thought,
Yeah.
but the Germans still had planes that would come over and strafe the beachhead. So, and we had to wait for the barges to come in. There was so much damage done, so many boats that were sunk. And of course they were doing a lot of, I'll call it cleaning up. Like I said, it was a very exciting time. And at that time when we did hit the beach, even though we were supposed to be a surface outfit, and almost every one of us never thought we'd be home. You wipe that out of your head. Excuse me. The simple reason was it was either kill or be killed. So,
Well,
but we didn't meet too much any land combat, and being motorized, they scouted us around because where we were supposed to go, we didn't get to that point until almost a month later. That's how tough it was.
so that month that took you to get there, you were just trying to get there the whole time?
No, because we had other things to do. We went to see St. Marie and Glees,
Okay.
and this is where we camped in, and we lived in foxholes.
Where were
And
you originally supposed to go? Do you remember?
to St. Lo.
St. Lo?
And it took, I don't know how many bombing raids to get St. Lo. But what we had to do was, they was unloading ships anywhere along the bank. And a lot of our stuff came, and then we had to make sure that it was stored, especially gas masks, because they were still assuming that they was going to use gas. And then, of course, we had other stuff that the chemical depot used, like especially FS, that smoke.
Okay.
And
First, like a smoke screen?
yes. So Oh, a lot of different other equipment. Gee whiz, you really kept busy.
So you lived in, when you were at St. Mary Glees, you say you lived in foxholes?
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, it was interesting. It was two-man foxhole, and
With a tent over the top? You showed me some pictures.
yeah, at the first we didn't have a tent, and then we seen we're going to be okay, so we put our tent, because you had a two-man tent, and we put it over the top, and we got stuff from unloading these ships, and made some nice bunks.
Yeah.
And
So you had supplies coming over from England after, once you got to St. Mary Glees, there was more chemicals and supplies on other ships that came over that you had.
yeah, we had access to a lot of stuff. And there's so many things that were happening at that time. And we found out right away that there was still Germans in our area. And they had set booby traps amongst the hedges. There's a lot of hedgerows. And that's where we lost the first guy from my outfit, my group.
Trap?
Yeah.
Like a landmine?
Yeah, he was going through a hedgerow. And of course there was a lot of equipment laying around, German equipment, and of course the GI said, "Gee, well, I'll pick up something." Then he went through this hedgerow and got blown up. And being that he was one of my fellas, which is a tough thing to do, is ride home. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
So this is the way it was. And they were getting these fellas, and these German snipers were living in culverts and whatnot. As the troops were moving by, they would jump up and blast them.
So the snipers were in the area of St. Mary Glees?
Yeah, and they were living up in attics of old farmhouses, stuff like that. That's what we come in. They give us a cleanup job to go and get some of these guys. You never know if you hit anybody, because if I had 30 guys and we all fired our carbines at the area, who do you know? In the one house, there was about 4 of them up there. But
And you ended up retrieving one of the sniper rifles.
yes, I was out in the field, and the Germans came to strafe the area again. So I dove into a hole, and lo and behold, it was dark, and I got some matches out, and I looked, and I felt this body. It was a dead German, and he was one of the snipers. So I took his rifle and his gun sight. I kept it with me, and I notified the grave registration outfit. They were all around, and they took him and buried that guy. It was weird. I had it lay there until the Germans left.
Yeah. But you made it out alive,
Oh yes,
obviously.
there was a lot of headquarters over there from the Germans, big radio stations and stuff for aircraft, monitoring our aircraft. And
So now, were you in some sort of leadership role in your platoon or what have you?
yes, I was the platoon leader, even though I was a corporal. And I didn't want to talk too much about that,
Okay.
but I did what I had to do, and I could say something here at that time. They were willing to, when I got discharged, to give me my rating and back pay and that, but I was so happy to get home. I told them, no, forget it, because I had to stay in for a while
In order to get that?
to get it, and I didn't want to do it.
So now, you left Saint Marie Église and hit the Red Ball Highway across France.
Yes,
And were you headed back to Saint Lo, the original town you were supposed to set up in?
no, they were sending us into Belgium, and we went in and we had they broke our outfit up. We had four sections in our unit, and we were hauling up 4.2 mortar shells with trailers, driving a Jeep pulling the ton trailer behind us, and we were going up to where the front line was going to be, up in Belgium.
How long do you think you had been in France at this point before you started headed towards Belgium?
Oh, you lose track of time. It took us a few days to get there. Although, really, at the end, it didn't seem that, when you look at it, gee whiz, how come we didn't make better time? But you got to remember, there was so much damage that was done, and tanks all over the place. We wasn't the only convoy going. There was all kind of supplies that they were pushing up towards the front, and the front was quite large. It just wasn't that one little area.
Yeah.
And so when we finally hit the place, one of the places we were going, the combat engineers secured the town, and they had to leave because they had to go up ahead.
Remember which town that was?
I'm thinking it was Remigny, France. It's right on the border.
Okay.
And so they told us we'd have to go in and round up all the Germans in this town, because they were living with civilians, and we worked with the French underground. That's quite an outfit.
The French underground?
Yes,
They were on our side, right?
yes. So this is what we did, and we rounded them up and we put them down. All the German guys we rounded up, we put them down in a castle down in a dungeon.
What was that castle like?
It was supposed to have been a famous castle, and this is where we stayed, where we were quartered for a couple of days, because we had to keep moving, and we had to wait for replacements to come up so we can continue on our way. And of course, other units took these prisoners that we had and took them into German prison camps, to American prison camps. They had them all over. So then we continued on, and this is when we ended up in Liège, Belgium.
You say that you got your first good look at the buzz bombs in Liège, but before you expand on that, was there ever a time when you guys actually were called to use the chemical bombs and things like that, or
No.
orders that you had on you?
No. No.
Did the Germans ever gas our guys, where you guys had to
No.
go in and decamp?
We had false alarms that they were gonna use gas, but they didn't. So we were ready.
Yeah.
So,
So you ended up in Liège and these buzz bombs start.
yeah, well, when we were crossing the Meuse River on the pontoon bridge, that's our first buzz bomb that we seen. And of course we were excited to see this buzz bomb coming over. And where was it? When the motor cut off, it was coming right at us. A lot of guys jumped in the water
Yeah.
because we had our trucks going on this pontoon bridge. But I stayed with the truck, and it did hit part of the pontoon bridge, but they fixed right away so we can get off of there. And then when we got in the town of Liège, we went to live in the school building. And lo and behold, we were there for a while, and lo and behold, one of the buzz bombs hit the building. And we had some other fellows staying with us, and they were helping cook, and they got it. So we hurry up and said we got to get out of town because the Germans were going to break through. So we scattered out, took all of our equipment, and went outside of Liège. I don't know, about 20 miles, something like that, and set up a depot.
Back north of Liège, or do you think
Gosh.
back towards France?
No, up closer, going towards Holland,
Okay.
and this is where we lived with civilians.
Now, when your schoolhouse came under attack, was that actually the Battle of the Bulge,
No,
or was that?
no, that was a buzz bomb,
Okay.
strictly buzz bomb. While we were in Liège, one of the jobs we had was to guard SS troopers up on the top of the knoll. We call it Buzz Bomb Hill.
What was it, guarding the SS like?
It wasn't a picnic, and there's things that went on that you had to go in by yourself to wake up their cooks and whatnot. They did their own cooking. They were mean. And of course, if something happened, we had machine guns all around the stockade. And it was our guys, my guys that were the guard. And we had floodlights.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we'd fire rounds to let them know, hey,
You mean business?
yeah, stay where you are. Of course,
Did you make a run for it ever?
them? No. We try to, the officers were real strict with them. And we asked for the ones that were more, they had to do something. So we had their officers go with our guys when they had a work detail for them to do. And mainly it was for their own stuff, getting their own food in,
Mm-hmm.
and well, from us, we supplied them, but they did the labor work. And there was stuff that they had to fix up, for chow hall and whatnot. It's quite interesting. And they were punished. Their officers were tough with them. They were punished.
So the German officers handled the German prisoners,
Yes.
and these were all SS guys?
All
troopers?
SS troopers.
Did your outfit capture them, or were you put?
Oh, no, they were captured, and they were put in this quickly built stockade way up on, I told you, Buzz Bomb Hill. And we lived up with the civilians at that time because until other troops came up. And so maybe we'd be on guard duty maybe 8 hours, and we were relieved, and we went, caught some shut-eye, and we walked. We were so close to there where we were staying with civilians that we could walk there and do our check-in. And when you're in the service, you do things automatically. You don't have to be told twice. Mm-hmm. So we know what our job was, what they assigned us to, and we did it.
So then you were living with civilians. It's still in Belgium, correct?
Yeah, in Belgium, yes.
And this is where you met, you lived with Mr. and Mrs. Dumont?
Right.
And he had quite a bit of land with a sugar beet mill.
Right. He was a big game hunter, too, also.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He went all over Africa and that. You might say he was a millionaire. And in fact, our first Christmas, we got there just about Christmas time, and we were living in his house. And
this would have been 1944.
Yeah, and he wanted us to, all his possessions he had in our sleeping area. Me and one other fellow was assigned there. And he had the mayor of the village came, and we had dinner with him. And it was really something. I can talk quite a bit about living there. He had one son. They had one daughter that there was a German general that lived with them when the Germans had it. Mm-hmm. And his daughter got sick, and they wouldn't permit him to take his daughter to get special treatment. She died. It was a sad thing there. And his wife reminded me so much of my future mother-in-law. They spoke Flemish. We learned to speak Flemish. And he wanted to give me everything when we were going to leave. He wanted to give me a Belgian horse. What am I going to do with a horse? And he wanted to give me guns. He had guns he had hidden, and I couldn't take them. And there's so many other things that he wanted me to have. And I corresponded with him for about a year when I came home. But then I didn't hear nothing from him. His son was wild, young kid, and we used to give him a lot of stuff, and he really appreciated it. He even gave me a car. He had a car stuck in the garage and needed repair, and I got it repaired for him. And from our motor pool, we had a regular motor pool. And he wanted me to take it. He said, "I'll ship it home for you." I said, "No, I don't want your car." I said, "Your son could use it."
So how long do you think you stayed with the Dumont family?
Christmas, I would say almost 2 months until the Germans were breaking through.
Breaking through the lines?
Yeah.
Is that when you ended up close to the battle lines during, you call it the Great Tank War between Patton and Rommel?
Right. Where the sugar mill was, this is where they set up a tank repair. They was with us, which we were happy because we had protection.
Yeah.
And it come so close at times Eisenhower came there a couple times where we were. And it was so close that we had everything wired to blow up.
All of your chemical stuff?
Yeah,
Now, why would you wire it to blow it up?
so they wouldn't get it. You know, we had an awful lot of, it was, well, we had 4.2 mortar shells. That that belonged to chemical warfare, believe it or not. The 4.2 mortar was a chemical. And of course, then we had stacks of that stuff. And of course, we had all that smoke. It was just a bunch of equipment that we had that we just couldn't leave.
Yeah. So what was the tank battle? What can you tell me about the tank battle? Were tanks coming and going to be repaired and then headed back out to the line?
Most of them that they went and brought in, they were pretty bad. Even our dead men were still inside.
Oh, yeah.
They were all cut up bad once the shell got inside. But what they did, they set these where you can remove the turret, and they had enough other people that could operate that, and that was our protection. They moved those tanks out with tank movers. They had regular tank retrievers.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd set up around the perimeter of the town and give us some type of protection. Thank goodness it never happened. Now we could see up from some vantage points, we could see the tank battle going on. That's how close we were to it.
Wow. So was that the Battle of the Bulge then?
Yes.
And you never came under direct attack with the Germans coming down on you?
They infiltrated us, but we captured them.
How would they infiltrate you?
They needed to find out more. They came into our headquarters at the sugar beet mill, and they must have thought we were dumb. And we found out real quick that they were Germans.
But they weren't wearing German uniforms.
No, they were in American uniforms, and they spoke perfect English.
2 of them? 3 of them?
2 of them. The 2 that we caught. That was my group that caught them.
Yeah. Pretty excited about catching those guys?
Well, everybody was.
Did you lock them up or put them in the stock?
Oh, we call you had other, you contacted other outfits. There's all kind of outfits around, and you know it's so hard to explain. I mean, we just wasn't by ourselves. Even though a lot of our guys, even though I lived with civilians, there was guys that didn't live with civilians. They lived on a farm, maybe in a sheep shed or something like that. And you got to remember now, it is winter time, and it was cold, awful cold. So.
Were you still living with the Dumonts at this time?
Let me see. They were going to move us out. Yes. When we left there, we went to St. Trond, Belgium, and it was pretty assured that Patton won the tank battle, the Battle of the Bulge.
And you said that it was a short time later that the war was over, shortly after that
Yeah.
Battle of the Bulge. And you were in Liège on Pass
Yeah,
when it was over, and you say you got potsed.
yeah.
You got a Belgian policeman to take you home. What happened that night?
Well, he put me up, put me to bed, and He was a great guy.
What type of stuff were you guys drinking over there?
Oh, I was drinking cognac or scotch, mainly cognac and scotch.
Yeah.
And everybody was so happy that the war was over. And oh boy, I had a hangover.
So now that the war's over, you moved to St. Troun, Belgium.
Yeah.
You had Germans again that were doing your...
Those were the home, what we call the home army. They were school teachers. There's a lot of Polish soldiers. And we didn't have to worry about them. They were prisoners. They were in the stockade. And we had the Germans on one side of the stockade, the Poles on the other. Because some of them didn't get along too good with each other. They were still in the same army, but they would have their ball games, and it was always ended up in a fight. We had to go in and break it up. But we had them doing all of our labor work and cleaning where we were staying, the school we were staying in. And I felt sorry for a group. They were eager to do things. And we had them in the back end of a semi, an open semi. And we're hauling them to work sites. And the truck tipped over. And some of them were killed. We felt awful bad about that. They had, you might say, the guy, the German, he had free access to go in and out of the gate because he took care of the generators that supplied the power for us. And he can listen to that engine. If it didn't sound right, he would run out there and run out the gate. Of course, we are at the gate, but this waved him on.
The German POW?
Yeah. So we even had Germans that came up to the gate, and they escaped from another place, and they found out that, hey, this is close to their home, so they asked us to take them in. And it was a riot. They used to, I was leery at first about going and get a haircut or something. I don't know whether they're going to slit your throat or not, but.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
But oh heck, we went in, and they cooked pretty good. They had good cooks, and so we'd have our meals with them.
With the Germans
Mm-hmm.
and the Polish.
Yeah.
So then the war's over, and they gave you furlough, and you went back to England from.
I went back to England, and I went back to the area back in Cinderford, England, that was on the coast of Wales, and we had so many friends there that we made when we were stationed there, because remember we were there almost a year. 9 months before the war invasion started.
And how long were you in England before you got to head back home?
Well, and I went back to England on I think I mentioned I was there when on furlough. And I had a week's furlough. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, they give us the war. That's when the war was over. We had crossed an English Channel when the war
was over in Japan.
in Japan. And so they gave us another week furlough. And but then when we come back, and what you're asking me here now, we thought we were going to have to go to Japan. They had us all mark our bags and everything. We're going to Japan. And So we started out, and we were going to sail there, and we thought we can go home, and because we had enough time to go home. But word come out that no, we are going to go home. So they turned us around, and we went to this St. Tron area, and some of the guys, if you wanted to stay in the Army of Occupation and become an officer, you could. And I didn't choose to do that. I wanted to get home.
Well, now before that though, when you found out that the war in Japan was over, you got to do some plane rides on the Air Force planes, right?
Yeah.
And you told me once that you got sick on one of those. What happened there?
Well, they didn't mind if we became a crew member. Well, I wanted to sit in the nose of one of these bombers.
You remember what kind of plane?
I think it was a twin engine with the gunner sit right up in the front nose of the plane. They had to squeeze you in.
Yeah.
And so that lousy pilot, he was a good egg. And he said, "Okay, I'll give you a ride." We had to be on a mission. We were flying into Paris and to pick up supplies. And of course, we were going to do the labor work to load up the plane, whatever we were picking up. So this guy, smart guy, made some nosedives, you know, and I got sicker than a dog. I had to get all new clothes and everything. And they were kidding me about that for a long time. And then another flight we took was a reconnaissance. They were flying way up aerial photographs. And these guys, the Air Force guys, were tickled to death that, hey, you know, we'll go up, take your place, be on the plane. So where we went was over Holland and taking aerial shots of everything around there. And because that was right next to Belgium. And that was good. I enjoed that. But then they cut it out. They wouldn't allow us to do it anymore. We was right by an airfield. There's a big airfield there.
In England?
No,
In Holland?
in Belgium.
In Belgium.
So the next thing you know, we were on our way to going home.
Where'd you end up what was the port city in the United States that you sailed into?
We sailed into Boston. And that was on Thanksgiving Day. And it was quite a trip coming home.
What year? That would have been 1945?
Yeah. 45. Yeah, I think it was. What was bad about that trip coming home is we were the last ones to get on board ship, our outfit, and we thought, well, we're going to be the first ones to get off.
You remember how many of your 250 got on that ship?
No, I don't. I'll tell you why. Because some of the guys went in to be Army of Occupation. Some guys they were offered officer's position. Mm-hmm. And some guys just wanted to stay in. And of course, a lot of them stayed in. They had to get back into the infantry and left the chemical depot. And of course, whoever left to fulfill our quota, we had 250 men. Well, there'd be other troops that they would come go back with us to fill our, so they can get back home. And we were really anxious. Oh, what? And they went by the time that you were overseas, and we were overseas almost 3 years. So, which was okay, but getting back a story on being the last ones on board, and we thought we'd be the first ones to get off. They made us the last ones, and we had to clean the ship. So we didn't get on Thanksgiving Day, and there's a story on that. I think I got it written down that they didn't want us to dock because it's a holiday. Mm-hmm. So the captain of our, it was manned by Coast Guard, our boat. And it used to be the USS Manhattan, I think was the name of civilian name for it. And he says he's coming in, because we had a lot of paratroopers with us, and some of the guys, the paratroopers, I knew. They were from my area in Indiana, and he says he's coming in whether you're sending out a pilot or not. You should see how quick they send pilots out. And they even rigged up a band, and so they could, and the Red Cross was there to welcome us back. And of course they had to set up mess hall for Thanksgiving dinner. And they had a lot of German prisoners working at that time in these mess halls and that. It was right at the port, and there must have been glass or something that broke and got into sweet potatoes or mashed potatoes or whatever. The guys chewed and cut their mouths up. And
I think that was on accident?
Well, this is what they try to find out. They gathered all the German prisoners up to make sure, just what happened. Here we are, it was nighttime already, and we were so happy to be home on Thanksgiving Day that, and then this happened. It was quite sad, because some of the guys, they had to go on in sick bay to make sure that everything was all right. It could have happened, something in the kitchen, and they didn't know it, and some glass might have broke. They had a lot of automatic stuff, potato mashers and whatnot. But
you made it back to Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And got married shortly thereafter.
Yeah, didn't take me long.
No. And so you were engaged the whole 3 years you were gone to Europe.
Yes.
Was there any communication back and forth between you and Grandma?
Yes.
Letters?
Letters. Write letters all the time. And for a while, when we were on the go, you didn't get that. They didn't catch up to you. And then when you got a stack of letters, it took you a long time to read or get a package. And see, I never smoked or anything until I got in the service. And so your grandma would send me cigarettes, because they were hard to get in the States too. And but I wanted more goodies instead of cigarettes. And what she sent me.
What type of goodies?
Eats, especially homemade cookies and stuff like that. my mother worked at the Frable School, and that's where Grandma graduated from. And during the war, they learned how to fix stuff for soldiers overseas. And they would make some canned goods. And so my mother and Mary would send me some of that stuff. I was real happy overseas. There was a Jewish fella in our outfit, and his folks always sent him
Tapes out.
Is it?
And what would this Jewish guy bring?
Oh,
He was getting sent stuff, right?
yeah, he was sent salami, and he didn't care for it. And I said, just let me have it, because it was time he got it was moldy,
Yeah.
on the outside, but that made it better. So, and we used to give him stuff.
Would you just cut the mold off?
Yeah, just skin it, and it was perfectly good inside. Yeah, that was a delicacy when you got that.
So then you got back to Indiana and you ended up getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to work at U.S. Steel.
Yeah. I had to wait, though, because there was a strike on. And I only had so much time to get back before I lost my seniority. See, we were promised to continue our seniority. And I would have lost 3 years, which would hurt me on my pension. Which I wasn't even thinking about at the time. But I didn't, I just, I had it was quite a mix-up with the strike on. Of course, you had to give your job back. The guys that left to go to war. But I didn't get my old job back. And I was quite perturbed about it. But the boss that I had, he told me, Ted, he says, bear with me. He says, there's a fellow that's going to retire, old timer, and I want you to take over that job, which I did. I did a lot of drafting work, and which I really enjoyed, and I worked with power consumption, all the power that was generated in the plant, which we sold to the city of Gary and to Southworks. And
how much money did you make per hour?
You really want to know? When I come back, I got 72.5 cents an hour.
And that was a fair wage back then, right?
That was the basic wage. Well, I'll take it back. I think it was like 65 cents an hour when you come in. And they had to give you the same pay that at least when you
were working at the mill before you were drafted.
Yeah. But as things worked out, the job that I was doing, and it wasn't. They had a union. This is when they started a union in a mill. It was right after the war, and the union was really getting strong. And of course, and I worked there for the first couple months. I did a lot of different jobs and working in the powerhouse. And then this fellow retired, so I took his job. And I used to do all calculations on power in the plant, what we generated and what we sold, and a couple of other things. And then they put us on salary employee instead of hourly employee. Boy, I got a raise. I thought that was great.
What year was that? Do you remember?
That was in I think 46, maybe 47.
So not long after you got back. Then.
Yeah, not long after I got back. But you know, here, come back, get married,
And start a whole new life.
and 72.5 cents an hour. Well, let me tell you something. Mary was a good provider of watching the money, and we was able to put a couple dollars to the side. And when you tell somebody, just like I'm telling you, it's hard for you to believe that you could survive on that. And I had a car, and of course gas was cheap at that time, and I had an old car, and but we made it go, and of course maybe I'm getting ahead of my story here. Didn't take, like I mentioned before, it didn't take Mary and I long to get married when I come home, and we had a rough time at first, and of course I was just a young fella. You remember that, and we talked about having kids, and well, I felt I had a good job, which I did at that time. It was a steady job, and I'd get some overtime. Boy, that was, man, we got overtime, boy, we'd set that aside. And well, you didn't have the things to spend money on like you have today. You got to keep that in mind. You wanted food on the table, and maybe we'd go to show, but show was cheap. You can go to show for about 12 cents.
Really?
And if you wanted a hamburger or hot dog, go to Coney Island for 15 cents. You can get a chili dog, you know, and something to drink. So we just loved what we were doing. We'd go see a stage show in Chicago, or maybe even in Gary if they had it. We had some nice theaters. That was our entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Was the theaters, and of course Mary and I liked to dance, and so we was always hoping to be invited to somebody's wedding, because he always had some good polka bands and that, and because when we got married, that's what we had. But we made it. And
I'm glad that you did, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, then, my dad had bought some property years ago, and I'm going back quite a ways, because my dad died when I was 8 years old. And my mother had this lot. And she says, if you're not going to use this lot, she's going to sell it. And I think my dad paid $675 for it. Well, at that time, that was a lot of money. So I says, I told Mary, I says, well, gee whiz, how are we going to swing to build a house? We were talking, I was living in an apartment. And so I said, well, let's go out and take a look at this lot. And so where I thought it was, and the streetcar would go so far up there. And I says, well, there was a contractor wonderful guy. He lost a son in the service. And I went to see him, and he says, Ted, he said, I'm going to build your house for you. He came up to our apartment. He says, but you got to wait until the restrictions are off, because you got to remember, at that time, stuff was hard to get, very hard to get. The only furnaces they were putting in houses at that time were coal furnaces. And he wanted me to have a gas furnace. And there were certain things that he couldn't get, like porcelain bathtubs. They wasn't porcelain, or toilets. And he says, no, I want you to get better stuff. And so he finally one day called us up, and he says, I'm ready to start building your house. Because we went to see some houses that he built. And he helped me a lot. We bought a 1.5-story home. And I think, I forgot exactly the full price. It wasn't like $10,000 or something like that for the house. To which we didn't have any money. But hey, we're going to swing it. And so, which he did, he kept his price like he told us what it was going to be. And I had it on a block of wood, and I still kept that wood. And so he built that house. And his son became a builder too, and his son got me started finishing upstairs. I did it myself to save money. It worked out fine. We had a nice home. And I don't know if you don't remember that house, do you? So, and then we had, Louise was already born. So when we moved in there, David was on the way. And so, you know, we felt so happy that we're going to have our own home. It was a nice home, very nice, brick home. Brick veneer, I should say. And we lived there for 20 some years. Over 20. We had a mortgage on that house. And man, when I think about, you know, what mortgages are, it was nothing. And but to us it was
Times, though.
Yeah, at that time. And of course I kept working in a mill. Salary kept going up and up, and I became a supervisor.
You worked there for 41 years?
41 years. And they were cutting back at that time. When I retired, they call it, they opened the window. And they even give us an extra bonus, extra money to take retirement. I could have stayed because I was only, 59 years old. And I was a young fella yet. But I didn't want to pass that up. And well, since that time, you know, now I still am on pension. And it worked out fine for me. And after I retired, they started giving guys lump sums, which they're cutting back today. And they were getting, you might get a lump sum payment, depending on your years of service. Well, I might have got around $450,000, but that's it. You had to invest it. You didn't get nothing else. And some of these guys, when they took that, oh man, that's a lot of money. Sure it was. But years time, they blew it. Then here I'm still getting, every month I get a paycheck.
Well, hey, I just wanted to we're sitting here 60 years after D-Day, and they dedicated the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and tell me about what went on over there in your 3 years in the service. And
Well, thanks to your mother and dad that
I'm proud to have you as my grandfather. And I really appreciate what you guys did over there, and your whole generation was something special.
well, the guys that lost their lives there, I was very fortunate. Even though we was right with them, we wasn't a combat outfit. Now, they told us that we were going to have to be combat. And they didn't use gas, and they were sure they didn't. You know, they told us that, like when the Germans were breaking through, that, hey, you're going to be a combat outfit, so don't forget it. And our guys were ready. And I was a machine gunner. We only had 4 machine guns, 1 for each platoon, 50 caliber. But we never did use them.
Never shot the machine.
Not over there. No, we fired in England quite a bit, practicing. But we set them up, but we didn't shoot anybody. Now, with some of these SS troopers I was telling you about, the work crews that we had, well, they trying to pull some shenanigans, and we lost a couple of them for what they were doing. That's all I'm going to say. So it was easy. They were electrocuted.
Really?
Yeah. But that's all. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, we can stop right there. But I thanks for.
Well, I'm glad to do this, and you know, I'm not accustomed to this.
Well, neither am I.